love this place.
Oh wow.
This is where everything like news.
Okay, this whole wall of figures here, this bank, these are all G.I. Joe. Before I started the book, my G.I. Joe figures only went up to here. They were, in fact, this is where I had my G.I. Joe. And so when I started the book and decided to get international figures, I figured, okay, it would grow to maybe here. I had no idea it would grow to this much. Wow. Now, one of the reasons, although I will admit, is also because I didn't know they were going to continue producing Joe figures. So I thought that we were sort of at, in the early 2000s, I thought we were getting close to the end of Joe. So I've been keeping up with it because I want, when the books are released, I want them to be current, and which is one of the reasons it's really slowed me back down getting this book done, was because I spent so much time trying to get the new releases, and it just was really difficult. Over here, these are all early test shots and prototypes and whatever that have been coming out. Everything from Resolute to, there was an Arctic Cobra Commander in white. I got him. I was really happy to finally find him. And there's just all sorts of neat. I don't collect prototypes per se, but when they come up and they're just like too cool to pass up, I go ahead and get them.
Just a quick question. I know you mentioned just now, real quickly, the G.I. Joe Resolute and I guess briefly the modern era stuff. Do you have I guess, loyalty to the vintage versus modern era?
Vintage. Definite loyalty.
Just curious.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the modern and I see the nice sculpting and whatever, but what I really like about toys are the kids can play with them, that they can set them up and they don't fall over. Yeah. You have to work so hard to get the modern ones to stand up. I mean, that's why they come with stands, because otherwise they fall over. Right. I prefer to be able to use them without stands. Yeah, it's hard to use modern figures without stands.
I love it.
And so I think they look really nice, and for display pieces, you can't pass them. But they don't hold their weapons very well. They have the articulation, but their hands are so rubbery that usually the weapon will fall out, at least eventually. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely. I mean, I know that vintage have their problems. The crotch pieces can break, their thumbs can snap off, but I would rather take those problems than the modern problems.
Yeah, definitely.
I take it you didn't get Arctic Duke with the jacket that one time it was.
No, I didn't. No, I did. I wish I had. I didn't even know about it until much later.
What about City Strike Scarlet?
Yeah, I got her. You want to see her?
Sure.
There she is.
Yes, she is.
What is this?
This is a canceled Scarlet, City Strike Scarlet.
The City Strike Scarlet.
Any reasons why they canceled certain?
You'd have to ask them.
Okay.
I mean, people speculate, but
well, they got rid of the actor mold, so that's why she got canceled.
Oh, is that the reason?
Oh,
because that's actor mold.
Okay. Yeah, but they could have kept the same figure and just did a different head.
Well, I mean, it's still the same Resolute body. They figured that's good enough for us.
Okay.
I mean, this guy's canceled.
Can I see this, sir? This one? Oh, that's cool. I've always wanted to see that in person.
See, I keep trying to get him. I keep trying to get Arctic Threat here. I'm not surprised you have Skeletor version, as I call it.
Is that a prototype?
Yeah, that's a prototype.
Yeah.
Go ahead, dig through.
Okay.
Wow, yeah,
the cartoons are what really make
that's
it.
What made it for me.
The cartoons or the comics, either way, for the younger kids, the cartoons. And then it really gives them the mythos and the atmosphere, and so they can then head out from there. It's really nice.
Because that's where my love for JoJo came from, was the cartoons.
Right,
so.
we call them too.
Yeah, because we even bought her, it was, the new G.I. Joes with the bath.
Yeah, well, everybody had it up, and if you look at the photos, they all look slightly different.
One or two.
So you had to really get in hand to see. We're trying to be nice here. Because I haven't seen
I don't know. He was called. He was one of the ones that they were just selling, and he looked interesting, so I pulled him off.
Was this supposed to be something canceled? Because I haven't seen that one before at all.
Was this supposed to be the Duke in training?
That's Ninja Training.
No, Snake Eyes in training.
Yeah.
Snake Eyes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's Snake Eyes in training because I think it's got the original head. Yeah, that's Snake Eyes in training. Yeah, it's too bad there's so much from Rise of Cobra that's canceled now. They have to track down.
I really wanted to see when they went on that tour, the drop ship that they canceled. I really wanted to see pictures of that because I heard it was amazing.
So we got the symbol right for there, and this is the symbol that you use on the trooper.
Did he do that just so that
it doesn't have any eyeballs?
Did he almost identical?
No, he did it by accident.
Oh,
yeah, and so he said that's a one of a kind, and so he said, after they did that, they realized the red was too close. They were going to change the symbol, because they realized they made a mistake, and they said, you know what, we're going to change the red symbol.
I ordered the case.
Oh, here it is. There's the Cobra Commander.
Oh, wow, that is cool. I mean, how many of those actually got out is the question.
I only know of
Unless
2
you
or 3.
Two.
So here we have Secret Wars, Dungeons and Dragons, Jurassic Park, Xena, Voltron. Here's Starcom. Here we have the older lines. What do you call it? The Dukes of Hazzard and other older Mego figures. Here we've got Star Trek, the 3 different 3/4-inch older lines: Galoob, Ertl, and I forget the other right now. Obviously Flash Gordon, Swamp Thing. Oh, let me show you a cool prototype Swamp Thing. I used to go to the toy shows that they would actually have, the New York toy show and then have a Dallas, and I got lots of cool things from them. Here is a Swamp Thing that was a prototype that was not released, but what they did do, there you go. What they did do was use the same mold type. They had several different Swamp Things, and I only was able to get one of them. But these ended up being as mammals. So they were originally supposed to be Swamp Thing figures. Come on, people, help me. Marshall Bravestar, thank you.
I played with that when I was a kid too.
Here's Tron, Robotech, Star Trek, He-Man, Zorro, Clash of the Titans. God, some of the stuff I'm actually forgetting. It's been so long. Sectors. I've been messing with this stuff. Is the sail barge that my son built when he won the Star Wars Ultimate Collector, whatever it was, contest. And just for the fun of it, sort of in celebration of having won it, he decided he built this. He was really excited because he got to go meet with the Star Wars creative team up in Rhode Island at Hasbro headquarters. He just wanted to share his creation with the Star Wars creators, and they enjoyed it. They enjoyed the pictures of it, and for instance here, the rudders move, and I mean he put some nice work into it. And if you notice, there are figures on it other than Star Wars, and that's because Q from Star Trek is there, and as we all know, Q can do anything, and so he.
Yes, you can.
So that's the deal with that. I just have Alpine climbing there because I didn't know what to do with them. I thought, why do I have this Alpine? Oh, I know. I'm too lazy to go upstairs. I'll just put them there. Everything that you see there, except for the 12-inch figures, and the 12-inch figures that used to be under there, everything is under here in that cupboard. I mean, that's how tightly I pack everything.
Oh,
Everything
wow.
is under there. It goes back and it goes along the side of the house.
Is Colin more of a Star Wars fan?
Yes.
He is.
Well, he's both my sons were both Star Wars fans, and Colin was G.I. Joe, and Ethan was Transformers. But if you had to have his very favorite would be G.I. Joe.
I don't see the Hot Toys snap kits.
No, I stopped collecting really in the year 2000, except for Joe's.
Those are worth getting.
I know, but there's a lot of stuff that's worth getting. That's the problem. And I just ran out of room, and I decided to cut it off in the year 2000. The only reason I keep buying now is because I'm doing this book. Otherwise, I would be completely done, and I'd, get into my, my boys have now left home. I would like to be just an old lady and doing old lady things. And as soon as the book is done, that's what I'm going to do. This is where I keep all of my international. There are no American vehicles in here. Everything in here is international.
Whoa. Wow. That's really neat too.
So that's the Canadian flag, the Canadian Defiant. So along that wall there, you have Action Force and European UK, except for there's phantoms from different countries up there. On this side here, you have Canada. Here you have some Venezuela. Here you have Mexico, here's Brazil, and some Argentina.
Do you have the?
Oh, and the fun school's in here. I don't have room to do the fun school. Yeah, I like that.
Do you have the 82 Sears base like on the display anywhere?
When we go downstairs, it's in one of those bins. I can show it to you.
Because I was just want to see, because is it made of the same type of cardboard or?
Not quite like this. This was made by Palatoy, the Star Wars base. It was also released for Kenner Canada, also by Toll Toys in Australia, and also by Miro Meccano in France. And it uses the same construction as that base there. That's the early Action Force base. It's a different construction than the Cobra base.
That's pretty cool. They use make bases out of cardboard.
See, they use the X-wing fighter guns, and it's nice. And it's got like a trash compactor, and it's actually kind of a nice base. It's got a lot of play value. You can set up a lot of figures in it. And see, I love the color of these Brazilian. They actually are even darker if they don't have dust on them.
Well, that's really neat.
See, most of this I've never gotten to see in person before. We just had our set few toys and
Here, let me move
That
aside
was
so
it.
you can look.
Aire, I had a quick question.
Uh-huh.
I know this is a really extensive foreign collection. Did you notice any like differences as far as like the quality of materials used, constructed the from
In-
manufacturing?
Yes, I
Is there a
did.
difference in that?
Very often, as unlikely as this, well, I shouldn't say it's unlikely. Very often, the stuff in Europe is actually better made than the stuff in the U.S. I'll
Better
give you some examples. Yeah, like for instance, look at the rubber wheels rather than the plastic wheels on the Stinger, and then and their decals are much more vibrant than the U.S. decals. A lot of people will see the older decals and see how sort of faded looking they are, and think, oh, we need repro decals. They actually came that way originally. If you look at the ones that are just as old that are from Europe, they're much brighter, and that's across the board. If you find two vehicles and one has really faded decals and one has really bright, there's a good chance that one's from the U.S. and one's from Europe. So decals, true. The plastic seems to be very comparable. I know I get less, but there was just something the other day I was thinking I get much less breakage with on European ones. I can't remember what it is now. Yeah. Now, if you go to other countries, of course, Canada, they're exactly the same. They're identical to the U.S. They just have Canadian flag decals with the word Canada on them. Now, stuff that's made in Brazil, Argentina, in Mexico, they are a little more brittle, and also many fewer were made, and so they are harder to find in good condition. Here, let me just show you, because since these aren't on display, these are Fun School items. So the Fun School vamps are very different in color, and then here you have more Fun School. Look at the bright color on the Thunder Machine. Of course, the Imp is kind of very noticeable.
yeah. I guess you could put it in Street Fighter Online.
It's like the 90s, but
And then
hit India like
these are-
10 years late.
Wow. See the gray flak, for instance.
That's pretty cool.
These are the orange MMS with yellow missiles. And then what do we have down here? Again, look at the different colors in the Swamp Masher.
But the Fun School stuff are so hard to chase down. I mean, what is it about that line that makes some of the stuff that are really hard to find? I mean,
Because some of these were released in countries where there wasn't. First of all, there weren't as many made because the income level of people that would be able to buy them was smaller per capita than it would be here in the U.S. Secondly, there wasn't a culture of keeping stuff so much. I mean, after they played with them and broke, for the most part, they threw them away. They didn't just put them aside in a closet. One person told me it's because space is so limited. They don't have closet to just store stuff. So just combine all that together and they can be really hard to find. One of the things I tried to do was get one of every 85 snake eyes from around the world. I still have not been able to find Holland or Spain, but I'm working on that. And then also the Tiger Force figures, I try to get those from all the countries they were released. I have them now all except for one from France. These are Zaps from India. This is from Australia. This is Mexico. That's Brazil, the U.S. What else do I have? Anyway, I like Zaps. I like all the differences. The Tomax and Zamox, I'm also trying to get them from around the world. Again, I've been really centering on Canada a lot later. I just won the one from Canada. I was hoping it would arrive in time. I was going to put it there instead of the mail-aways, but it isn't here yet.